Hello and welcome to this video. And I have a really special guest here, the legendary drummer, Grant Calvin Weston, that I grew up listening to on these incredible primetime albums of Human Feelings in all languages, Virgin Beauty. In fact, I've had Virgin Beauty on in the car for the past month. An incredible album, an incredible album.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
so,
Yeah.
could you tell us a little bit of how you got the gig with Ornette Coleman?
Oh, okay. Well, first of all, thanks for having me here doing this interview. And how I met Ornette Coleman and went to New York. First of all, I have to thank Charlie Ellaby and Jamaluddin Takuma because we're all Philly cats,
Yeah.
And Charlie Ellaby lived 2 blocks from me, 2 blocks, and we had a band also. And he came to me and he said, Calvin, Ornette is looking for another drummer because Shannon Jackson was branching off and forming the Decoding Society. So I didn't know who Ornette was at all. I
So
was
how
a
old would
young
you at this point? How old would you be?
17.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
So you didn't know who Ornette Coleman was.
At all. I I knew Charlie was traveling the world and playing with him, and Charlie never turned me on to any of his music or anything. So I said, "Oh yeah," and it was actually my first time in New York, and Charlie took me up on the train and everything, uh and before I went into the rehearsal space, I listened through the door, and I'm like, what is this? What what is kind of music is this? Because I never heard it before. So I walked in the room and everybody was just playing. And I'm like, okay, what am I gonna do? So so I sat down there and I listened for a while and I didn't know what to do because I had came from a background of playing R&B funk music like Earth, Wind and Fire and Casey and the Sunshine Band and stuff like that and Philly and funk bands. So I sat there and I listened and you know what, man, God bless Ornette's heart, but I even know how to talk like him. you know, he said, what Calvin, you want to come up and play for me? And I'm like, I'm like, uh, okay. And so I sat down behind the drum kit and he just counted off 1, 2, 3, 4. And everybody in the room started playing. And I sat there and I said, well, you know what? I can't just sit here and not do nothing, look at everybody. So I came in and I started playing swing, like a jazz swing. And out of everything that was going on, he heard me when I came in and he stopped. And he looked at me and he said, Calvin, this not jazz music. This not bebop. This not bebop jazz music. And I said, well, I don't know what to do. I mean, I just didn't know what to do. 17-year-old coming there out of the blue, bam, a freight train hitting me.
And
You know,
who was
so
in the band at this point?
it was Al McDowell, Jamal Dean, Charlie Ellaby, Burn Nix, Donardo Coleman, and of course Ornette. Uh, and so the rest of the rehearsal, I just sat there and listened. I didn't play again. So I said, Ornette, uh, give me a week and let me come back up and play for you. He said, okay. So I went home and I said, well, what am I gonna do? So this is what's crazy. And I tell people about it. I went home and I found every Mahavishnu record that I could find. And I had a little record player, and I sat in my mom's living room, and day and night I listened to Mahavishnu Orchestra. I listened to the John McLaughlin licks, the Jerry Goodman, Phil, the Billy Cobhams. I listened to all of them because then that was so out to me, you know. And I said, well, this is kind of out music. Meanwhile, Ornette had gave me like a list of his tunes. And I said, okay, so on this tune of Ornette's, I'm going to play Birds of Fire. Okay. On this tune, I'm going to play another Mahavishnu tune. I'm going to try to emulate it. So the next week, when I got back to the rehearsal spot, Ornette would call a tune off, and I would look on my list and say, okay, this Birds of Fire. So when he count the tune off, I just started playing Birds of Fire, the best I knew how. I just started playing Birds of Fire. And Ornette stopped after about 2 minutes, and he said, oh, Calvin, that's good. That's good. That's good. That's good. And I'm like, what did I stumble onto? So all his tunes, then I had a tune of Mahavishnu Orchestra. Until, you know, I was in the band for a while, and Ornette held his rehearsals like a classroom. We all had a desk, a school desk, mind you, and in a circle with Ornette in the middle, and we went over melodies, improving around melodies, and actually playing the melody to the song all the way through until I found out how to play around the melody of the tune that we was playing and improvising around that, along with putting a groove into it and just playing the melody backwards, forwards, start in the middle of the melody, play the melody backwards, you know, rhythmically. And he was satisfied with that, you know. It was shocking to me that I can actually came up with that concept of playing Mahavishnu to Ornette's tunes. And
You blow my mind.
No, it's crazy to me too.
I just don't. I mean, I'm a student of the history of jazz rock, jazz fusion, and I'm a student of the history of jazz. I talk about it on my channel. And for me, one of the big things that never gets discussed in the history of fusion is you have the Mahavishnu Orchestra come out in the early 70s, and they really are the architects of that. And then later on, you get sort of Weather Report, maybe Pat Metheny. But at the same time, Ornette, who is really associated with that classic, you know, acoustic group with Don Cherry and Billy Higgins, all that. He moves towards fusion. And really, the most groundbreaking move in fusion ever was Primetime for me.
Yeah.
Without a doubt. And then you see, you know, you see musicians like Schofield, Pat Metheny, they're all Ornette Coleman styled. And you see that change in terms of the heavy fusion that's happening in the 80s.
Yeah.
But Ornette, again, is at the forefront of that, absolutely at the forefront of it. And so for you to explain that tiny little bit of DNA that comes from the Mahavishnu Orchestra into Primetime, then goes into M bass, or you know, all that's basically when I listen to modern fusion players now, I can hear that in there, that line through. And to think what I love about this is this actually comes from you as a very young person, I assume, going, this is wild music. What else do I know that's wild? It was that. Is that it?
Exactly. Yeah, that's it. That's it. And from there, I went on to I even listened to some Rush. I listened to Rush music. I listened to Frank Zappa. I listened to like Return to Forever and all the early stuff, like him from the Seventh Galaxy and stuff like that. And I just put it into Ornette's music, you know. And Ornette, he never once told me what to play. He always asked me, uh, what what are you playing and what kind of concept you coming from? And you know, I never told him that I was playing Mahavishnu to his tunes, but he didn't care. All thing he wanted me to do was express me in the way that I play, you know. From there, you know, learning his melodies, then it was like just free expression, you know. Feel free to go where you want to go at, as long as it's in the context of the melody,
So,
which
so
is,
did he work from the melody down? So he would have the melody first at the top,
oh
and
yeah.
you could react to that melody however you want. So it's almost like an inversion of what jazz normally does, where you have the chord progression and that's supporting the tune, and then you improvise on that structure. He's almost turned that upside down from what you're saying.
Yes, yes, because it was, even though it was structured to the melody, after you play the melody down, then when you on your improvised parts, you can put the melody anywhere you want. Anywhere you want, because eventually everybody's going to fall back together in the melody. You know, Jamal Dean would play the bass line, and then we have set up the rhythm or the groove, and then he would branch off into the melody somewhere, play it backwards, play it forward, play it started in the middle, and so would Burn Nicks. He would be there with the, and Charlie, he was like playing the melody. He always used a effect type of a thing on his guitar, like a fuzz or something like that, and he would just go. Al McDowell uh was, and he still is, uh melody, rhythmic playing of Ornette Coleman. He know Ornette Coleman's melodies backwards, forwards, in between, in the middle, everywhere. You know, him and Ornette will really carry the melody in all four aspects, like I say. So yeah, man. And after, you know, he told me, yeah, just play you, you know, play you. And I remember one time he he was so deep, man. I mean, he Ornette was so deep. He would pick out each person in the band and go with them one on one. I remember at one rehearsal, he played something, on the song, and he said, "Now, what did you hear? And what would you play to that?" So I will play something, you know, rhythmically to what he just played, and he would ask me, "Well, why did you play that?" You know, I mean, you couldn't sit there and not say anything. So I would say, "Well, I was just following uh your rhythm." You know, he said, "Well, why did you play that that ragtime right there in that spot?" I said, "Well, I thought that it matched one of the notes that you played in what, you know, what in what you just played." And he said, "But it would carry on and on and on and on and on." You know, well, is that note relevant to the note that I played? I said, "Well, I don't know. I was just thinking rhythmically." And he said, "Well, I want you to play exactly what you feel." And
That he seemed to have an incredibly intellectual approach to
Oh
free. It
man.
truly was free jazz with Ornette Coleman. He wanted people to be free, didn't he?
Yeah, exactly.
And to be able
You
to express themselves fully. It's
know,
like democratizing it, so it's not his band in a way. It's the collective.
it's the yes, exactly. That's what made prime time prime time because each person in the band had their own way of expressing the way they hear and they play the melody.
And this
And
must have been incredible experience at that age to be able to tour, do really good gigs because Ornette's, I assume was doing reasonable gigs because he's a legend. Is that right? Or was
yeah, oh yeah. Two
yeah.
weeks after that, 2 weeks after that, 3 weeks after that, he said, "Do you have a passport?" I was like, "No." He said, "We'll get one because we're going to Europe in 2 weeks." And next thing you know, I was in Paris somewhere as a 17-year-old uh person traveling first time, on an airplane, you know, and traveling and such a wonderful experience and a teaching, learning experience, and that just took me, that took my musical experience up to another level. Whereas though, really the people R&B cats that I was playing with and still do play funk and R&B. They didn't think I knew how to play funk anymore because I was like, playing so much out kind of stuff. And they were like, Calvin can't play funk no more. He play all that weird stuff. Good. I'm glad I play all that weird stuff, you know,
But
because
I
playing
I I I do love the early audits, all the groundbreaking stuff. But for me, it's got to
uh-huh.
be the prime time band because I'm such a fusion fan. And when I listen to it, it sounds to me incredibly complex, and I cannot understand how the band is operating with this framework of it's like there's no head then solos, there's no melodies start up, and then suddenly the band will drop in and everyone's together, then they're not, and it's and the
Yeah.
virtuosity. I've always Virgin Beauty. Who are the bass players on the album? Because it's the bass playing is insane,
Oh,
on that album. I've said this so many times. You listen to what and for two bass players, this is what someone I want to ask you. Was it a concept? Is there a concept of two bands there? Two drummers, two guitarists, two bass players. Is that an idea that Ornette would discuss?
well, it actually was kind of broken up into two trios.
Yeah.
It was kind of broken up into two trios. But uh I can play with what Al is playing around what Al is playing. And I could play around what Burn is playing. And on the other end, um, I could play with everybody. It's a
So
collective
it's
type
all
thing.
more. It's morphing around like this. When was that the approach? Is that you would, because there often seems like there's like little conversations will go off down there, and then somebody goes off here, and it joins back up, and
Yeah.
a fascinating approach, to making music. If we start with Of Human Feelings, which is one of my favorite albums, one of the things I
Uh-huh.
love about that album, it's the grooves are incredible. The funk on it is so heavy. So do you think that's what he was bringing you in for? I mean, did he
Yeah.
talk about funk? I mean, they're heavy funk. That's a heavy funk album.
Yes, he brought me in at first for that album because Version Beauty, what I mean, no, of you said Of Human
Of Human
Feelings.
Feelings, yeah.
Of Human Feelings was the first one that
Yeah.
I did with him. So yes, because as you can see, I'm just funking. I'm just funking. I'm just funking around all the bass parts and everything, while Donato is just like just chicka playing around that, and I'm playing with Jamal Dean, on there, because if I'm not mistaken, Jamal Dean is the only bass player on that.
Yeah, there's only one on that one. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So I'm funking with Jamal. I'm funking with Jamal. And sometime I would do a fill and not come exactly back in on a one. I will come back somewhere else because I'm playing with somebody. I hear, oh, and then I'm like, okay, let me go back into the funk part. That's he did basically bring me in for that, because
So why was Ornette bringing in funk, soul? Why is he bringing in the funk? I mean, this guy at that point, how old would he have been? He's like, I suppose he's 50, 60 years old. He's come out of the 1950s jazz scene. He's contemporaries, nobody else except for Miles, I suppose, is pulling in those influences like that. Why did he? Do you know why he brought in those influences? Why did he do prime time? What what?
well, well, I think it's because on that album it was only one bass player, so he wanted somebody to join in with that funk of the bass player, you know, because he wanted another person to hold it down when the bass player would go off, when Jamal Dean would go off. So I'm still there with the funk for him to come back in. Like, I'm still right there, when he goes somewhere with Ornette or with Charlie or with Byrne, he would go off with them. But I'm still there. While Donato was chicken away, around the melody. So basically, yeah, that's why he brought me into that situation with that album.
And when you say it sounds like and I've been listening to the albums. I didn't. I mean, we didn't know we were going to do this interview today. So I've been listening to Virgin Beauty in the car and In All Languages, which is an album I don't know so well, and I've been checking that out over the last month. Really, I'm fascinated by prime time. I really think that there's an approach there, and on this interview, I want to get to. I feel that the ideas that Ornette was doing were really consolidated in prime time.
Mm-hmm.
It sounds like he really knows. He's really developed an approach, which allows everybody to come in. But it's a definite approach. The harmolodic concept. Now, did he talk about harmolodics or?
Yeah, he talked about harmolodics. Whereas though, I mean, after all these years, I still don't know what harmonics is. I still don't. Only thing I know about harmonics is that all notes are relative to each other. Whether it's whether the two notes match sonically or sound wise, that's what makes the harmonic. Because the notes don't actually match up with each other. But then the next note that you might hit might add up, might join those two notes together. You see what I'm saying? These notes are off, but the next note you might hit might make the whole three notes sound, relative to each other. That's what I figure. Um, uh, You know what? The best person to really ask about that is Al McDowell. Is Al McDowell. I just talked to him last night, actually. He, just like I said, he knows Ornette's melodies backwards, forwards, and between, because he would play the melodies with Ornette note for note and even go off of a note that Ornette would play. He's the best person to ask that, because they are sonically related, because they play notes. Basically I played rhythms around the melody, so yeah.
but there's a melodic aspect to drumming, isn't there? That it's very difficult to describe in the same way as when you're soloing on a pitched instrument. There's a rhythmical aspect which nobody wants to seem to talk about, and the thing that joins them together is, and this is one of the things I find really. I'm a music lecturer as well, you see, and I've taught improvisation. And one of the things I've always had difficulty, and I got this from Ornette, was when you play a note, the note isn't correct because it's harmonically correct. The note's correct because of your intention behind playing that note.
Yeah, right.
And I got that. Now I learned that.
Yeah.
Ornette Coleman, because my two big heroes were John Coltrane and Ornette Coleman, and John Coltrane seemed to be trying to bust the music out from inside. He was going to take the sort of bebop language and explode it out, but Ornette was already there, because
Yeah,
what
he was,
is work from the top down, and what you're saying really seems to chime with my understanding. But part of the thing that is very fascinating to me is the fact of not knowing.
exactly. It's an expression. A note that you play is an expression. Yeah, that's how I figured out. And far as rhythmically is concerned, the note is an expression and a feeling of what you're hearing at that moment.
So there's also all these aspects of the timbre and the rhythm, or the lack of rhythm, and the volume. All these things have an equal weight, don't they, when you play? And
yes,
everybody sort of knows this, but I don't think the academy considers this. I think they fall on going, well, this is how you play jazz. And I've had done many videos on my channel challenging this idea that jazz can become really conservative, and it lacks expression as people play the licks,
yeah.
And I feel that Ornette's innovation has sort of been forgotten. Do you agree?
I do agree because people, I'm not gonna say people. I hate to say this, but people play the note as not a feeling of expression of way of what they feel. They play it as it's supposed to be like that. It's supposed to be a scale like that. That note is a part of that scale. Yes, but it's not an expression of the way they feel when they play that note. They play that note because it's supposed to be like that. That scale is supposed to be like that. But it's not only the scale, it's the note and how you feel about when you play it. So that's what Ornette was really into, expression of feeling the note that you were playing.
So the foundation in Ornette's music is not the chord progression. The
No,
foundation is your
is
feelings and your emotions, and expressing how you feel. And it's almost like he was trying to codify that. Like, if he kept questioning you, why did you do this? It's as though he's trying to get you to think. It's an extreme level of focus, because in free jazz, it could be very easy to just start to play anything, isn't it? So
yeah.
how did that not happen? And or did you ever feel like, oh, I'm really confused? I mean, I've never played the band like that, so I've got nothing to draw on.
Once I came up with the concept, the Ornette had told me that it's about sound. It's about the sound. It's about sound. Sometime in my studio, I throw a track in that is nothing but static. Like, and I play around that. And it's the same staticky sound, but different expressions come out of me when I hear and feel about those sounds. And static is so many sounds in there. So you play to your expression of what you hear of the sound. Like a bird tweeting, you know, it's so many things you can play around that bird. Tweet, 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 tweet. You know, you hear it's so many frequencies and sound is Ornette one of his concepts that he expressed for us to do, the frequency of the sound.
Was there any, oh, this is a really strange question, but that's what you're going to get from me on my channel. Was there any sort of storytelling elements? Was there anything where he would try and visualize an image or a story in there, or was it all pure music?
It was all pure music. It was all pure music. It's all pure music. If you listen to a song on Ornette's record and then we go play it live, it's totally different. It's totally different, except for the melody might be the same, but the free expression of everybody's playing together and listening to the sound is totally different. You only can play that once that way, because every time you play that same song, that same melody, it's going to be different.
When did your association with James Blood Ulmer start? Was it the same time as prime time, or?
Well, that is one day at rehearsal with Ornette. James Blood came to the rehearsal. I didn't know who Blood was either. So he walks in and we playing. And Blood asks Ornette, "Oh, wow, who's that drummer you got right there?" So that's Calvin. "Oh, yeah, okay. Yeah." So I got his information. Next thing you know, I was at Blood's house rehearsing with him. And then I saw with Blood, I was 19. When I started,
with Jamaluddin as well. Was that
no,
no?
no. When I went with Blood, it was Amin Ali. Amin Ali, the son of Rashid Ali. When I went with Blood, it was the power trio, just Blood, Amin, and myself. And it was a total different concept of Ornette. Total different concept. This, but almost the same harmolodic type feeling type thing. Well, with Blood, see, after that, Ornette had got another drummer, you know, stuff like that. He had got another drummer. I went with Blood. And my first rehearsal with Blood, it was crazy because he took me through a whole different type thing. I gets into the rehearsal hall at his house we call it the dungeon, because it was no windows, no air circulation, you know. And he said, "Okay, you see that snare drum?" He said, "Yeah." He said, "Take that snare drum, sit it over in the corner." I said, "Oh, okay." Took the snare drum, set it on the corner. He said, "Now, you see those two cymbals? Take those off, put those in the corner." I said to myself, okay, to myself, what is he doing? What is he trying to? I mean, I had no idea. So he said, now all you gonna do is play the bass drum those two times and the hi-hat, and you're gonna accent on the hi-hat, and you're gonna play a drone. I didn't know what a drone was. And you're gonna play 4 on the floor. 1, doom, 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 doom. And you're gonna play those toms as a drone. And I said, "Well, what is a drone?" he just start hitting this E string. Dong, 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 dong. Just kept hitting the E string. And he said, I want you to play inside of that sound, of that. That was his drone. So, and I said, well, what you want me to play inside there? He said, just play a rhythm, a 4/4 rhythm with the bass drum on four, on all fours. 1, 2, 3, 4, 4. 4 on the floor. So it goes dunk, 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 dunk. And now I want you to play that drone and this rhythm with this melody. And he would play a melody, and I would have to play the melody, holding the 4 on the floor, and play the melody on the toms and accent on the hi-hat. Other words, my hi-hat became my snare drum. And the cymbals became actually my hi-hat. If I wanted to crash, I had to open up the hi-hat and come back in on the 4. Totally different. Totally different playing a drone. And that's what we did. And then he asked me, he said, well, you could put the snare drum back up there now, and you're going to learn the melody on the snare, which if you heard some of Blood's melodies back when we did Are You Glad to Be in America and Freelancing and Black Rock, you hear really fast melodic lines played on a snare while still holding that 4 floor like this and playing the drone on the drums. That's how I really learned how to play the melody lines on the snare drum really fast. Because back then, Blood would play fast. And you had to play all that on the snare drum while accenting on the hi-hat, while playing the drone, while keeping the 4th floor, and you can crash sometimes. Totally different than all that. And we used to be in the dungeon for like 11 hours a day. And same with Ornette. Ornette would rehearse us, oh man, all day. We'd get a break for lunch, and we would try to take as much time as we could for lunch. But when we went back, we right back on it. Same with Blood. We rehearse 7, 8 hours, then we would break, and that's it. I recall one night with Ornette, because we all stayed at his house, at his apartment. He had the school on Rivington. We all used to stay there. We had cots and stuff. We had cots. I had my cot. Jamal had his cot. Charlie had his cot. Donardo would go home. Byrne would go home. But we was there, and I remember one night when I'm laying down, and Ornette taps me on the shoulder because he recorded every rehearsal, and he said, came up to me with his Walkman and his headphone and said, "Hey, Calvin, hey, I want you to listen to the rehearsal from the day," and it's like already 11 o'clock at night. I mean, I couldn't say, "Oh man, no, I'm tired." I just took it. And put it on, fell asleep with the music playing in my ear. So we would do it like that. And same thing with James Blood, playing those lines. And you know what? I talked to Blood a couple days ago. I still play with him. We still play together, and he wants to do an album this year.
How is he? Is he well? Because he's in his 80s now, isn't he, James Blood?
He's well. He can still play. He's in his 80s. He don't get around that well, but he do. He's still go to Europe and do a solo gigs. And we went to Europe last year in November. Last November, we went to Poland with David Murray and Mark Peterson. We did some things over in Europe, and he's still doing it. He's still doing it, and he sounds good. He sounds good, and he's playing. You know, so
These guys, to me, when I hear these stories, these guys are they're like visionaries, and it's as though they come from an era where you didn't go to jazz college, you learned on the bandstand and you learned in the band, and these
yeah,
and figures like Ornette and say Sun Ra did this. They all lived as a community that demanded total focus to
yeah,
try and do something new, not old, not to try and nail something that someone else has done before, but to be able
yeah.
to forge new ground. And their commitment, Ornette's commitment to this was
Oh
total,
yeah.
wasn't it?
Oh
Absolutely.
yeah. Oh, absolutely. Because even after, we rehearse and stuff, on that, he'll still be writing, still be playing in his room up until all wee hours in the morning. When we get up, he's still up or playing, creating. You know, I seen Ornette one time, take the music because you read the music from left to right. So at the rehearsal, he took and he flipped the page around to the other side because he wrote so hard you could see the notes coming through the back of the page, and he played everything backwards. And I'm like, but it's almost sound the same, even though he was playing it backwards. It almost sound the same, you know. So I was saying, like, wow, that's amazing. Blood did the same thing at one time, and Blood, we he had me playing the melody along with Amin Ali, which I still talk to him. I talk to Amin about, man, we just talk all the time. He'll call me up and talk about something about 10 times a day. I would talk to Amin, really. He's don't do any traveling anymore. Uh he still plays at home, but he doesn't do any traveling no more because he has some medical problems. But he's good. His spirits is good. About the time, now I'm going to go off a little bit on the time with James Blood Ulmer. So when we had a gig at the Bottom Line, okay, one of the highlights of my life. We had a gig at the Bottom Line, and we were playing. We were playing. We was doing our thing. It's just a trio. Blood, Ali and I, and we were playing. So I'm looking in the back of the audience, and I'm seeing this guy, like going back in his chair, like, oh man, like, and really enjoying what we're doing. Oh yeah, woo, yeah. So after our set, bam, I goes backstage, drying off, drinking stuff. Who walks back there? Who comes back there? Billy Cobham. Shaking my hand. Oh man, man, y'all was killing it. Y'all was killing it. Oh man. And all I could do was stand there with my mouth hanging open. In my mind, I'm saying, that's Billy Cobham. That's Billy. And he's shaking my hand, man. Oh man, that was great, man. That was, man, y'all. oh man, y'all was killing it. You know, lo and behold, I didn't know that we was opening up for him that night at the Bottom Line. I'm glad I didn't know. Oh, I'm glad I didn't know, because 9 times out of 10, if I would know, I would have been so nervous. But no, I didn't know, and we were just going at it. We were battling with the music. We played everything, and we were so tight. I watched some old stuff of Blood Ulmer. We rehearsed really hard. We rehearsed really hard. And we were really tight. We were tight with the melodies and everything, breaks and everything. That was my experience of when I first met Billy. Ever since then, I communicate with Billy all the time over through Facebook. I goes to see him play when he comes to Philly. And I recall one time at the North Sea Jazz Festival, I saved Billy, and he said, "Yo, Calvin, I'm playing over at 10 such and such. Come on over." So I went over, and he said, "Sit right here." And I was like 6, 7 feet away from him. And he said, "No, you just sit right here." And I sat right there on the side of the stage and just watched him. And every time I see him, he tell his bandmates about the story that when we first met. So fantastic.
And what did Ornette or James Blunt, what did they think of the jazz rock guys, the fusion guys? Were they listening to that stuff? I mean, so for example, what did Ornette think of the Mahavishnu Orchestra or Weather Report or any of those bands?
I have no idea, because he never talked about them. He never talked about Mahavishnu. Blood never talked about Mahavishnu. I don't even know if Blood, he might have known who Mahavishnu was, because he do know Billy Cobham.
Mm.
So he does know about the Mahavishnu Orchestra, but they never talked about it. Um, and that was when I go into a situation, you know, actually the first thing I actually think about is, you know, Mahavishnu Orchestra. When I hear a piece of music, I say, okay, let me see if I can emulate something on this piece of music that's from the Mahavishnu Orchestra. You know, part of our concept is going into a situation. It's different, even with the folk with Billy later albums, like he does now. He's not stretched out like that, like he was with the Mahavishnu Orchestra. He's pretty much laid back. You know, I even go into situations like that when I hear a piece of music. And people want me to do this on their albums and record for them. And this studio here is on the 3rd floor of my house. I have 2 studios, one in this room and one in the other room. And I record people's stuff from this room right here. And since the pandemic, I had to come up with something to try to earn money. So I built this studio. It's a little studio, but I get good sound, send people good tracks. And I've done and still doing, I did 6, 7 albums for people from this room since the pandemic. And they still sending me tracks today. So I don't have to move. They send me the stuff. I say, okay, here's my PayPal. Drop it in there. I'm here. Ornette has he changed my whole concept of listening to sound and melody. My whole concept, it changed. you know, the way I approach things has changed because I listen first to the melody, and I go off the melody all the most of the time.
Yeah, this is the big thing I've got from this interview is realizing that Ornette's great achievement was to put the focus back on the melody, which
Yeah,
is a simple thing, which I think gets forgotten, especially nowadays in the current jazz scene where it's all about certain licks and it seems like virtuosity has got the upper hand. I've always been into virtuoso players, but now I feel that there's too much emphasis on virtuosity and not enough on. I think it's melody because melody is everything, isn't it? All the elements in music come together to create melody, don't they? In the end,
yeah. I mean, people, write songs. So I mean, melody is basically uh the song. I mean, you can get
yeah.
out of the melody and play around the melody in the free jazz world, but that's what we do. We play around melody and the sound of the feeling of that note that is played, that feeling, you know, that you feel in your heart and your soul, and and the way you express it, you know, you could play you could play a wrong note, but how you express that note, it's no wrong notes.
If you mean it, it's not wrong.
Yeah,
If you
exactly.
mean it, that's what I got from Ornette. I would sit
Exactly.
there, put records on, I'd pick up my guitar, I just put my hand on the guitar and I'd play a note like I meant it. And as soon as I heard that note, I would go, well, where am I going? This is what I got from Ornette.
Yeah.
That's what I listened to. And the thing is, I didn't know anything. I would just put the records on and listen to Ornette, and that's what I got from it. And I thought, well, I can play what I want, and it made me more brave. Which
Yeah.
it's right, isn't it? It makes you brave to know that you can't go wrong
You
as
can't
long as
go wrong.
your attention is right. And that's based upon your feelings. And I've realized that in this interview. What are you doing at the moment, playing wise? I see you work with Vernon Reid, another hero of mine.
Yes. Vernon Reid, Jamaluddin Takum, and I have the trio
Yeah, that's a
called
band. The
Freeform
band.
Funky Freak. Yeah. It's
Yeah.
it's called Freeform Funky Freaks. Last year I produced the record during the pandemic, you know, I produced the record remotely with Jamal and Vernon because Vernon Reid did the first record, which is called Urban Mythology. Jamal Dean produced the second one called Bon Vivant. What I don't even know what that means. It's some French stuff, I guess. So, but it's a good record. And then it was my turn to produce a record, which I call Hymn of the Third Galaxy. So, and we did that remotely because it was during the pandemic, whereas though I sat in my house and I recorded some drum tracks, sent them to Jamal. Jamal put his bass lines down on the tracks. Then then it went to Vernon. Vernon put his parts down. And it came together and it's on Rope a Dope Records. It's called Hymn of the Third Galaxy. And it's all total improvisation. To- Total, because we did it remotely. Everybody just played what they heard. Vernon put his sounds on it and solos. Jamal did his bass lines, and I just sent them the track. Okay, this track sound nice and clear. Let me send it to him. Just playing something,
And
you
what was
know.
it like when you got that back and put it on? I bet it was incredible.
Oh man, I was like, I had to. of course, I had to get an engineer to mix it and master it and stuff like that. And when I put it on, it was it was hearing it for the first time, and I was like, "Oh wow, did we put that together like that?" It was totally incredible.
Well, the thing is you guys and what you've pioneered and what you've gone through, you are exactly the right guys to now work in this digital age, because
Yeah,
to be able to have someone, because the thing is to be able to sit down and structure a drum part and be able to imagine the space and it's like it's almost like asking a question, isn't it? You ask a question to the other musicians, and then for them to be able to respond, you know, at their
yeah,
end and not fall into going, well, shall I listen to it over and over again? Which I'm sure they never did. I'm sure they would have reacted.
yeah. They just
Um,
reacted in real time, just like
because they're
that.
brilliant improvisers. You're all brilliant improvisers, and so that's and it's a beautiful thing, because it shows me that the spirit of jazz is still
It's
alive.
still
It's
alive.
still
Yeah,
alive.
yeah. Because when I did the beats, I didn't say, "Oh no, I didn't like that beat. Let me do it over." No, I just played and said, "Okay, the levels is good. This drum sound good. Okay, bam, print it, send it off. Play something else." But I also learned from Ornette and through Blood that when I do sit down and I just play, if I play on this drum kit and just sit down and play, from the first time I hit something, I start humming. I start humming a bass line or some kind of melody that comes from the first note of when I strike a drum. I strike a drum, I'm going somewhere else from there. And not knowing, it just everything just falls, everything just falls in place from every time I hit a drum.
The I think young musicians need to hear this. They need to hear what you're saying. That this is the approach to playing music. And if you want to sound like Charlie Parker, you could go back and learn those solos and all that type of thing. But Charlie Parker wasn't playing like that. He hadn't gone to jazz college and
Yeah,
worked a
right.
bunch of licks. He was in his own thing, playing from his heart, what he felt, and that he
Hmm.
changed the world. And I'm so pleased to have spoken to you about this, because I could feel it just coming off you. You know, the knowledge, the what you learnt from going to
Oh yeah.
Ornette Coleman and James Blood Ulmer school, which is
Yeah,
basically where you
yeah,
went.
yeah. The school of Ornette Coleman, James Blood Ulmer. Now, I had a run with John Laurie and the Lounge Lizards.
Mm.
Now, briefly, now that was structured music. That was very structured. You play this beat on after 16 bars, you go here. After a few bars, the melody comes back in, you play with the melody, you stop. That was very structured music. But my concept was okay, in between there, what I'm playing, I'm improvising in my head. Okay, I got a part to play, but I'm thinking of a groove that I heard somewhere else, but I'm making it my own. See, that's the thing, is that you got the Billy Cobhams, the Buddy Riches, and all the Dave Weckels and Dennis Chambers and all those fantastic drummers. But if you try to emulate them, you're not going to emulate them. But what you could do is you could take that and what you hear them doing and make it your own. Put it into your own feeling. Do that every day up here. Every day I put it into my own feeling. If I hear a groove, I always say Billy Cobham because that's my man. Um, I just make it my own. I don't try to sound like him or play like him. I take that and make it my own. you know, my own feeling, my own heartbeat, my own soul, you know, and that's what I do. And that's what I mean, you
And
know,
that's what everyone should do.
yeah.
Because if you copy someone, you'll either not achieve it and become very depressed, or you will achieve it and then you're just a clone of that person.
Of that person. Yeah. You know, you have to make everything your own. And I so much appreciate Ornette, Blood, John Laurie. I played with them for 10 years. Um, and still play with John Laurie. Even though he don't play horn anymore, he plays guitar and has a harmonica, and still play with Blood. Ornette changed my whole thing around, my whole concept of approach to sound.
Well,
You
I
know,
hope in a little way, this little interview we've done, that a few people will watch it and they will hopefully go back to Ornette and check that stuff out. And hopefully, because it is a riddle, without a
yeah,
doubt. It is a riddle, Ornette stuff.
yeah,
And I've got to say, the albums, I tell you how, when I first saw Ornette in the 1980s, they made a documentary. I don't know if it was called Skies of America. You know that big documentary, and he's with. Are you in that group? Were you in that?
yes,
Yeah, I thought,
yes,
yeah. So I have been listening to you because I saw that a couple of years after it came out. I was a teenager. And
yes,
the incredible thing about that, not only did I get to see you play and that band play, but you got Ornette explaining what he was doing, and it blew my mind. Uh, and this idea that he was talking about being at the center of the universe, that there's the perspective of that we wherever we're at, we are at the center of our universe. You know,
yeah.
that stayed with me. And then I went and checked out Prime Time, and it was those albums that I really put my head into, and it was difficult. It's difficult. I remember when I first saw, Ornette, Prime Time play on that video. I was like, what is going on?
Yeah, well, you could just imagine what I thought at 17. What's happening here? I mean, wow, Uh, but that was we did this Skies of America with the Verona Symphony
That was
Orchestra.
it. It's incredible.
Incredible, man. I listened to it and I was like, wow, that's the first time I played with the orchestra, went to Verona and at this big space, and there was all these violins and cellos and everything. I'm like, wow,
And
this is
what was in Ornette's head to be able to conceive something like that?
don't
Because the
know.
incredible sort of modern classical music that he obviously wrote, he'd scored this piece, and then
Yes,
he scored it in a way that allowed prime time to then come in.
to
And
come in.
yeah, and you could see when you watch that documentary, I remember what struck me was the orchestra when you started playing, the exhilaration of having that within an orchestral setting. It just seemed
Yeah.
to bust the orchestra out. They're like, whoa, I think the conductor's like, whoa, like, and this is the stuff that stays with you. And
Oh yeah.
I didn't know whether you would play. I knew time wise you must have been, but it's incredible that you and me end up talking. I was 17, 1985. I think I saw that 86. So I was like 18, 19. I saw that, and here I am talking to you now.
Well, yeah. I mean, hey, you know what, Andy? I'm so appreciative of. I have no complaints. I mean, I have no complaints with the music. Sometimes as musicians we get in a rut and we not, you know, we fall off a little bit. But I'm glad I have my little studio up here where I can come up here every day and I can play and I get on Facebook and I contact musicians. Hi, stuff. Let's do this. Let's do that. You know, not making much money, but I'm not complaining because I'm not out in the streets, you know, messing
What what you
around. And
what you want? What would you have rather done? Make a ton of money or change the face of music? Because you did. That band did, without a doubt. That band Prime Time did it. I don't think it's got the credit it should have.
Yeah,
The
yeah.
most important band in jazz in the early 80s was Prime Time, without a doubt. And you
Was
hear it all. I mean, Ornette's influence on culture is huge. It's just not appreciated, you know, but
yeah,
it's huge.
it's not. It's just ironically, just the other night, I posted up all three of those records on Facebook. And it's tired of the full albums because I sat back and I was listening to it and I was like, whoa, this is stuff is like, wow, did we did we do that? I even listened to like the trio or the quartet with Charlie Hayden, Charlie Hayden and Don Cherry and Billy Higgins. I listened to
The first disc of In All I
of
yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I listened to
I
that.
think that Ornette did that, a double album, or he
Yeah,
goes back to his original group and then he puts it against Primetime, and you see not the differences, but you see the similarities. It's almost like he was saying, "This is my concept all the way through."
all the way through.
Incredible.
Yeah, all the way through. And I listened to the first album I did with James Blood, Glad to Be in America. I listened to that with David Murray, Olu Dawa, Oliver Lake, Shannon Jackson. Let me tell you something about Shannon Jackson. I learned so much from Shannon Jackson uh about expression of when you're playing and when you're feeling it. Because he would really just feel everything that he was doing. He was feeling everything that he was doing and grooving with it. And when we had the double drum thing with Shannon, it just took me out, you
When
know.
did that happen? I didn't realize you played with Ronald Shannon Jackson. He's one of my favorite drummers. He really is an incredible drummer. Decoding Society with Vernon Reid,
Yeah, yeah.
albums, Taboo, and you know, Decode Your Other God. It's incredible. It's all pieces in the jigsaw. You know.
Yeah. Well,
Uh,
that was on the Are You Glad to Be in America album. It was me and Shannon. And when we rehearsed together, it was Shannon and I. And because after that he went to the Code Society, of course.
yeah.
You know, and also Donardo. The truth of the matter is that just like we discussed before, Ornette bringing me in was the kind of anchor things down, especially on Of Human Feelings, because Donardo really couldn't keep a straight rhythm going, a straight beat going. And it dawned on me why, because he was constantly playing the melody with Ornette and playing around with the melody and wasn't holding, the beat. So that was my role, while Donato was playing the melody on every tune differently, and in between and around. All starts with the melody and sound, you know. That is, just changed my whole life.
Well, all I can say, what you did is it's changed a lot of people's lives, changed my life. So
I
I'm
appreciate it.
so pleased to have nailed this. I mean, I messaged you like about 4 hours ago, said, "Do you want to do an interview?" Yeah, I want to talk about Ornette, and here we are. So it's been a wonderful thing.
Yeah, because I just come up here and I do my little thing and I record and get my drum sound together, make sure my levels and stuff is good. And I'm up here every day. I probably go back downstairs about 6, 7 o'clock. I got some audio work to do here with templates and stuff. Whereas though I'm no engineer, but if
We've all had to learn it
things
a bit, though, haven't we?
yeah, right. Yeah. If it sounds good right there, I'm just like, okay, I'm leaving it right there, you know, because if as soon as I mess with one thing, it might mess up the whole thing, and then I would not know how to get back to it. But yeah, Andy, I appreciate it. I appreciate people tell me that, you know, yeah, man, when I heard such and such, such and such, such and such, it changed my life. You know, I'll be like, okay, well, thank you. I don't know how it changed your life, but you know, it's groundbreaking. And I'm
Because it,
glad to be a part.
it's I think music's an expression of love in a way.
Yeah,
I really
yeah.
do, and I think it brings us all together. And I think that there are these lines, and if the more you follow them through, the more these lines join up. And
Mm-hmm.
I mean, last week I was talking to Billy Cobham, and now I'm talking to
Wow.
you. We're both talking about Billy Cobham, and then other people are watching the videos and they're seeing this, and it is like a spirit that runs through music, and it's a beautiful thing. And I'm so glad I've got it. I think I would have gone nuts if I didn't have this. And
Yeah.
it's been lovely to talk to you and to, you know,
Well,
it's like
same here.
two
Same
drummers
here, Andy.
chatting, and it's like I feel like I've known you for years, and
Oh, thank you so much.
because of the music, because it's there. I'm going to switch off now, which always
Okay.
I'm always
Thank you
busy.
so much.
Yeah, I'm going to switch this off. Thanks for doing this, and hopefully you can pop up on my channel at another point in time. That would be fantastic, and
Yes.
do a little bit more.
Send me the link of when you edit all this together. I like to.
I will.
All
It's
right.
gonna be called it's called Ornette Coleman, the man that broke jazz.
All right. God bless. Thank you so much.